Keshia James was shaking so badly, she almost dropped her phone. Blood covered the schoolboy's hands as he pressed them into his side, his breathing short, uneven, wrong. His uniform was dark, soaked through. Keshia didn't dial 911. She dialed a number she wasn't supposed to have. When the man answered, she whispered, "There's a child bleeding behind your restaurant." Silence. Then the voice on the line said calmly, "Is he worth the trouble?" Keshia looked at the boy's face, at how young he was, at how hard he was trying not to cry. "Yes," she said. Another pause. Then the man replied, "Then don't let him die." The call ended, and the sirens still hadn't arrived. This isn't a story about crime. It's a story about time. About what happens in the minutes before help arrives, when rules start to feel heavy and a life starts to feel light. A black waitress makes one decision behind a restaurant, a decision she was never trained to make, never authorized to make, and will later be punished for making. On one side, the system. On the other, a bleeding child. And in between, a phone call that should never have happened. Stay with me, because what happens next isn't about heroes or villains. It's about who really moves when the rules don't. If you've ever wondered what you do when the right choice isn't the legal one, stay till the end. The alley smelled like old oil and wet cardboard, the kind of place people hurried through without looking down. Keshia James pushed the back door open with her hip, trash bag balanced against her side, already thinking about clocking out. It was late. Her feet hurt. The night felt ordinary. Then the trash bag hit the ground. A shape moved near the wall. At first she thought it was a pile of clothes. Then it breathed. The boy was sitting on the concrete, knees bent awkwardly, back pressed flat against the brick as if he'd been placed there. His school backpack lay open beside him, notebooks half spilled, pages darkened by something wet. His hands were locked over his stomach, fingers trembling, slick with blood. "Oh my God," Keshia whispered, dropping to her knees before she realized she was moving. The boy looked up at her fast, too fast. Fear, sharp and practiced, flashed across his face. Not confusion, not pain alone, fear like he was still being watched. "I'm okay," he said quickly, his voice cracked. "I just fell." Keshia's eyes dropped to his uniform. The blood wasn't slowing. It was soaking through the fabric, spreading in uneven patches that made her chest tighten. She reached for her phone. "No," the boy said immediately. The word came out urgent, almost panicked. "Please," he added, lowering his voice. "Don't turn on the lights. Don't make it obvious." Keshia froze, her thumb hovering above the screen. She glanced back toward the restaurant door, then toward the mouth of the alley. It was quiet, too quiet, no footsteps, no voices. "Who did this to you?" she asked. The boy shook his head, biting down hard on his lip. "I can't," he said. "They might come back." Keshia felt something shift in her chest, an unease that had nothing to do with blood. She finally pressed the call. And as the phone began to ring, she realized she didn't know who they were or how close they still might be. The call connected to the second ring. "Emergency services," the operator said, calm and practiced. "What's your location?" Keshia gave the address automatically. She'd said it 100 times before for deliveries, complaints, inspections. The words came out steady even though her hands weren't. She kept her eyes on the boy, on the way his breathing hitched every few seconds like something inside him was slipping. "How old is the injured person?" the operator asked. "School age," Keshia said. I don't know exactly." "That's okay. Can you describe the injury?" Keshia looked at the blood again. There was too much of it, more than a fall. She described what she saw, choosing her words carefully, the way the training videos had taught her. Visible bleeding, conscious but weak possible abdominal wound. "Stay on the line," the operator said. "An ambulance has been dispatched." Relief flickered through Keshia, quick and fragile. Then came the rest. "Due to the current call volume, response time may be delayed. I need you to apply pressure and keep him awake." "How long?" Keshia asked. There was a pause, just long enough to matter. "I can't give an exact time," the operator said. "There are higher priority incidents in your area." Higher priority. Kashia swallowed. She pressed her apron against the boy's side, gentle but firm, just like she was told. His skin felt cold through the fabric. "Hey," she said softly. "Stay with me. What's your name?" "Theo," he murmured. His eyes fluttered, then focused again, sharp with fear. "They're not supposed to see me." "Who's they?" Keshia asked. Theo shook his head, breath shallow. "Please," he whispered. "If they hear sirens, it won't help." Keshia felt her stomach drop. Sirens were supposed to mean safety. But the way Theo said it, like a warning, made her realize something the operator hadn't asked and the rules hadn't prepared her for. What if help arriving was exactly what he was afraid of? Keshia shifted closer, her knees pressing into the damp concrete. She kept her voice low, instinctively, like raising it might break something fragile in the air between them. "Theo," she said, steadying her breathing. "I need you to talk to me, just a little." Theo shook his head again, harder this time. His jaw tightened as if he were holding words back by force. The blood on Keshia's apron had spread, warm and dark, and she tried not to think about how fast it was soaking through. "You didn't fall," she said quietly. Theo's eyes flicked past her shoulder, toward the mouth of the alley. His body tensed. "I wasn't supposed to be there," he whispered. "Where?" He swallowed. "I thought it was empty." Keshia followed his gaze. The alley was still quiet, lit only by a single flickering security light halfway down. Shadows clung to the corners, deep and unmoving. Anyone could be standing just out of sight. Anyone could have already left. "What did you see?" she asked. Theo's breathing hitched. His fingers dug into his side harder, and he winced, a soft sound he tried to swallow. "I didn't mean to," he said. "I was just trying to get home faster." Keshia's phone buzzed in her hand. The operator was still on the line, still talking, still asking her to confirm whether Theo was responsive. Keshia didn't answer. She was watching Theo's face. The way his fear didn't fade, it sharpened. "They dropped something," he murmured. "Glass everywhere, A sound cut through the alley. Not a voice. Not footsteps. A car door, somewhere nearby, slamming shut. Theo's head snapped up. His eyes widened, raw panic breaking through the pain. "They're here," he whispered. Keshia's heart lurched. She twisted toward the sound, her grip tightening on the phone. And for the first time since she stepped outside, she wondered whether calling for help had already taken too long. Keshia killed the call without looking at the screen. The operator's voice cut off mid-sentence, leaving the alley suddenly too quiet. Her pulse hammered in her ears as she turned back to Theo. He was staring past her now, eyes fixed, breath shallow, like prey that had learned exactly when to stop moving. "Listen to me," she said, lowering her voice until it barely carried. "Do you see anyone?" Theo shook his head once. No, not yet." The sound hadn't come from the alley itself. It had come from the street beyond, close enough to be nothing, close enough to be everything. Keshia pictured a car idling, headlights off, someone waiting to see if the lights came on, if the door opened, if anyone panicked. Her phone felt heavier in her hand. She knew the rules. She knew them by muscle memory. Call emergency services, notify a manager, do not engage, do not escalate. Every training video ended the same way, follow procedure and you'll be protected. But the rules didn't say what to do when a child was bleeding and afraid of sirens. Keshia's thumb hovered over her contacts. She scrolled once, twice, past names she trusted and names that wouldn't matter, then she stopped. The number had no picture, no last name, just 3 words she'd typed and never deleted after a late-night delivery dispute months ago. Hand deliveries. She could still remember the call. Calm voice, precise questions, problems solved without shouting. Management had told her never to call it again. Her heart thudded as she stared at the screen. "This is stupid," she whispered to herself. Theo let out a soft, broken sound, half breath, half pain. His eyes fluttered, then focused on her with sudden urgency. "Please," he said, "don't let them see me." Keshia exhaled. Decision, snapping into place like a bone set wrong but necessary. She tapped the number. The phone rang once, then stopped, and someone answered. "Speak." The voice on the line was calm, too calm for the way Keshia's hands were shaking. No greeting, no confusion, just a single word, flat and expectant. "There's a child bleeding behind your restaurant," Keshia said, the words tumbling out before doubt could catch them. "He needs help, now." Silence. Not the dead kind, the listening kind. Keshia held the phone away from her ear for half a second, checking the screen as if the call might have dropped. It hadn't. The line was still open. The man was still there. "How old?" he said at last. "I don't know, 12, maybe 13. Another pause. Somewhere on the street beyond the alley, an engine turned over and went quiet again. Theo flinched at the sound, his fingers tightening in her apron. "Is he conscious?" the man asked. "Yes." "Breathing?" "Yes." Keshia swallowed, but not well. The answer came slower this time, measured. "Do not move him." "I wasn't going to." "Good." A faint exhale came through the line, almost like relief but colder. "Where exactly are you?" She gave the location, every detail precise. Dumpster, back door, flickering light. "And the police?" he asked. "They're on their way," Keshia said. "The ambulance, too." "Delayed," he replied, not asking. "Yes." Another silence. Keshia felt it stretch, heavy with something she couldn't name. Decision, maybe, or calculation. Then he spoke again, voice unchanged. "Keep pressure on the wound. Do not turn on the lights." Keshia's chest tightened. "How did you?" "I will handle the rest," Han Kwon-yi said. The line went dead. Keshia stared at the phone, heart pounding, the weight of what she'd just done settling in. Theo looked up at her, eyes wide. "Who was that?" he whispered. Before she could answer, headlights washed across the mouth of the alley. And a car began to pull in. The car rolled in without urgency. No screeching tires, no flashing lights, just a smooth turn into the alley, headlights cutting through the dark before dimming as if the driver already knew exactly where to stop. The engine stayed running, low and controlled. Theo's body stiffened. "No," he breathed, trying to push himself back against the wall even though there was nowhere left to go. Pain flashed across his face, sharp enough to steal the air from his lungs. Keshia grabbed his shoulders gently, holding him in place. "It's okay," she said, though she didn't believe it yet. "Stay still." The driver's door opened. A man stepped out alone. He didn't look at the boy first. He looked at the alley, at the trash bags, the back door, the shadows near the street. He took in the scene the way someone checks a room before sitting down. Only then did his eyes move to Keshia. Han Kwon-yi. He was dressed simply. Dark coat, no visible weapon. His face showed no alarm, no hurry, just quiet attention. He stopped several feet away, respecting the space between himself and the boy like it was a line he wouldn't cross. Theo's breathing quickened. "It's him," he whispered, panic rising. I didn't mean to." Han raised one hand, not toward Theo, but toward Keshia. "He doesn't speak," he said calmly. "He breathes." Keshia nodded, unsure why she was taking instructions from him at all. Han glanced at the wound, careful not to touch, his eyes narrowing slightly at the amount of blood soaking through the fabric. "How long?" he asked. "I don't know," Keshia said. 10 minutes, maybe more." Han took out his phone and made a call without turning away. "Send him now," he said. "Yes, same location." He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Theo looked at Keshia, terror flooding his face. "Are they going to take me?" he asked. Before she could answer, red and blue lights flickered faintly against the far end of the alley. Police were close. But Han didn't move. And whoever he had just called hadn't arrived yet. Han Kuan-yi stayed where he was, hands visible, posture loose but deliberate. He didn't rush toward Theo. He didn't kneel. He didn't even lower his voice. Everything about him suggested patience, like time was something he could afford even if no one else could. Keshia felt the weight of that calm settle over the alley. It didn't make her feel safe. It made her feel watched. "Keep pressure," Han said, eyes still on the wound. "If he loses consciousness, you tell me immediately." "You said the ambulance is coming," Keshia replied, sharper than she intended. "And it will," Han said, "eventually." Theo whimpered softly, a sound he tried to swallow. Han's gaze flicked to the boy's face, then away again, as if looking too long might make things worse. "Did you see them?" Han asked, directing the question to Theo but keeping his distance. Theo hesitated, then nodded once. His breathing hitched. "I didn't mean to, I was just cutting through." Han didn't press him. He didn't ask who. He didn't ask how many. That absence of questions unsettled Keshia more than interrogation would have. Another car passed on the street beyond the alley. Tires hissed against wet asphalt. Theo flinched again, panic surging. "They're close," he whispered. "They won't want me talking." Han's jaw tightened, not with anger but with something colder. He took out his phone again, this time typing instead of calling. His thumbs moved fast, precise. "Look at me," Keshia said to Theo, forcing his attention back. "Stay awake." Sirens grew louder now, no longer distant. Red and blue light spilled across the brick walls, strobing shadows into something sharp and dangerous. Han slipped his phone away. "They're here," Keshia said. "Yes," Han replied quietly, "and so is the other help." Footsteps echoed from the far end of the alley, heavy, purposeful, not running. Someone was approaching from the opposite direction. And whoever it was, they weren't wearing a uniform. The footsteps stopped just short of the light. A man stepped forward, hands already gloved, jacket unzipped to reveal a medical kit slung across his chest. He didn't look at Han for permission. He didn't look at the police lights flashing at the end of the alley. His focus went straight to Theo. "I'm a paramedic," he said, voice low and controlled. "Off duty, don't move." Theo's eyes widened. "Am I?" "You're still here," the medic said, already kneeling. "That's what matters." Keshia shifted back just enough to give him space, her apron peeling away from Theo's wound with a sickening pull. Blood welled immediately. The medic swore under his breath, not panic, calculation, and applied fresh gauze with practiced pressure. Han remained where he was, watching but uninvolved, like this part of the scene belonged to someone else now. Police voices echoed closer. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out," one officer called from the street. "Good," the medic replied without looking up. He worked quickly, efficiently, and quietly, checking Theo's pulse, asking him to squeeze his fingers to stay awake, to answer simple questions. Theo obeyed, pain breaking through in small gasps. Keshia's hands hovered uselessly at her sides. Her job was done. That realization hit harder than she expected. The medic wrapped the wound tight, firm enough to slow the bleeding. "He's losing blood," he said, "but not enough yet." Yet. Sirens cut off abruptly as vehicles stopped nearby. Boots scraped against concrete as officers entered the alley, flashlights snapping on, sweeping over faces, over blood, over hands standing calmly to one side. One officer's beam paused on the medic. "You with EMS?" the officer asked. "Licensed," the medic replied evenly. "Off duty." The officer hesitated, eyes narrowing. "Then why were you called first?" No one answered. And in that silence, Keshia realized the questions were only just beginning. The ambulance doors swung open at the mouth of the alley, white lights washing over everything the police lights hadn't already claimed. 2 EMTs moved fast, their steps practiced, their voices clipped and procedural. "What do we have?" one of them asked. "Male juvenile," the off-duty medic said, rising smoothly. "Abdominal laceration, conscious, bleeding controlled for now." The EMT nodded, already kneeling to take over. No argument, no turf war. Just hands replacing hands, pressure maintained, oxygen mask fitted. Han Kuan-yi took a step back, increasing the distance between himself and the boy as uniforms filled the space. He became just another man in a dark coat, no longer central, no longer needed. Keshia stood frozen near the back door, blood drying stiff on her apron. An officer approached her. "Ma'am, is this your employee area?" "Yes," she said. "I work inside." "What happened?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The words felt heavy now, dangerous. "I found him," she said carefully. He was already like this. The officer nodded, eyes scanning the alley. His flashlight beam caught something near the dumpster, tiny shards glittering on the concrete. "Glass," he muttered to his partner. Theo stirred as they lifted him onto the stretcher, panic flaring again. His eyes searched the alley, landing briefly on Han. Something unreadable passed between them, recognition, fear, maybe relief. "Am I in trouble?" Theo asked weakly. "No," the EMT said. "You're going to the hospital." As they rolled him out, Keshia felt a sudden emptiness, like the moment after a storm when everything goes quiet too fast. An officer turned back toward Han. "Sir, can I get your name?" Han met his gaze without hesitation. "Han Kuan-yi," he said. The officer paused, just long enough for the name to register. And Keshia knew, nothing about tonight was finished yet. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and something faintly metallic. Machines hummed softly around Theo's bed, their steady rhythms a sharp contrast to the chaos he'd left behind. A curtain hung half-drawn, giving the illusion of privacy without any real protection. Theo stared at the ceiling, eyes glassy but alert. His hands were clean now, bandaged, the blood scrubbed away like it had never happened. That somehow made it worse. Without the blood, it was easier to pretend none of it was real. A nurse asked him his name, his age, what day it was. He answered automatically, voice small but steady. Each correct answer earned him a nod, a checkmark, a sense that he was doing what was expected of him again. Two detectives entered a few minutes later. Plain clothes, calm faces, not rushed. One of them pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down so he wasn't looming. "We just need to understand what happened," the detective said gently. "You're not in trouble." Theo nodded, but his fingers tightened under the blanket. "It was an accident," he said quickly, too quickly. "I fell." The detective didn't challenge him. He waited. Silence stretched. The machines kept humming. Theo's breathing began to speed up, shallow and uneven. "I didn't know anyone was there," Theo whispered. "I swear." The detective leaned forward slightly. "Where were you, Theo?" Theo closed his eyes. His face twisted, fear breaking through the practiced calm he'd been holding onto since the alley. "In the warehouse," he said. The word hung in the air, heavy. Both detectives exchanged a look, not surprise, but confirmation. "What kind of warehouse?" one of them asked. Theo swallowed hard. "The one with the trucks," he said. "The lights were on, and they weren't supposed to be." He opened his eyes, panic flooding back in. "They told me not to talk," he said. "They said they'd find me." Outside the room, footsteps paused. And someone stopped to listen. Theo's voice dropped until it was barely more than air. "There were boxes," he said. "A lot of them, not food, not like the ones the stores get." One of the detectives leaned back slightly, giving him space. "What made you think that?" "They were marking them," Theo replied. "Covering labels, peeling things off and sticking new ones on." He paused, eyes flicking to the door. "They kept arguing about a list. One guy said the numbers didn't match." The detective nodded once slow, and then Theo swallowed. Something fell, glass, it shattered everywhere. His breathing hitched as the memory pushed forward. They turned around, all of them. The room felt smaller suddenly. The hum of the machines grew louder, like it was trying to fill the silence. "I ran," Theo said. "I didn't know where I was going, I just ran." "Did anyone chase you?" the detective asked. Theo hesitated. His fingers clenched under the blanket. "One of them did," he said. "He slipped. That's when the glass cut me. His voice cracked. He yelled, I think he recognized me. The detectives exchanged another look, sharper this time. Recognize you how? One of them asked. Theo shook his head. I don't know, like he'd seen me before, like he knew where I lived. The door creaked softly. Theo's eyes snapped toward it, terror flooding back in full force. Please, he whispered, don't let them know I talked. Outside the room, the footsteps moved again, slower now, deliberate. And whoever had been listening had heard enough. Han Kuan-yi stood alone in the parking structure beneath the hospital, the city's noise muted by concrete and distance. He listened to the voice on the other end of the call without interrupting, his face unreadable as details came in: warehouse, subcontractor, altered labels, glass on the floor. Unauthorized. That was the word that mattered. When the call ended, Han didn't move right away. He replayed the fragments in his mind, slotting them into place. A delivery route he didn't personally review. A subcontractor he'd inherited from a merger and never fully trusted. Paperwork that had passed inspections because no one looked too closely. And now a child had bled for it. Han made another call. This one is shorter. Bring me the manifests, he said. All of them tonight. A pause. A nervous voice asked a question Han didn't answer. Now, he repeated and ended the call. Above him, a car door slammed. Footsteps echoed, quick and uneven. One of his men appeared at the edge of the light, trying too hard to look calm. Boss, the man said, there's a problem. Han turned slowly. There was a problem before you opened your mouth. The man swallowed. Police are asking about the warehouse. They know about the glass and a kid. Han's eyes hardened, not with anger but with certainty. Then you failed twice, he said quietly. Once when you ran a side operation, and once when you let a child see it. The man's confidence drained away. I thought. You didn't, Han said. That's why you're standing here instead of explaining yourself somewhere safer. Han stepped past him, already dialing another number. Inside the hospital, Theo lay awake, staring at the door. And somewhere between them, decisions were being made that couldn't be undone. The meeting lasted less than 10 minutes. Keshia sat across from the restaurant manager and a woman from corporate she'd never met before, hands folded tight in her lap. The office smelled like coffee and printer toner, clean and impersonal. No one asked how the boy was doing. No one mentioned blood. They talked about procedure. Unauthorized calls. External parties. Liability exposure. Failure to escalate through management. Keshia listened, nodding where expected, because interrupting would only make it longer. When she tried to explain, just once, that the ambulance had been delayed, that the boy was scared, that there wasn't time, the corporate woman raised her hand gently, like she was calming a child. We understand you were under stress, she said, but policy exists to protect everyone. Everyone except the person bleeding, Keshia thought. The termination papers slid across the desk, effective immediately. No severance. No appeal process worth mentioning. The manager wouldn't meet her eyes. When Keshia stood to leave, the corporate woman added, almost as an afterthought, it would be best if you didn't discuss the incident publicly. Keshia paused. Is that a request? The woman smiled. It's advice. Outside, the day felt too bright, too normal. People walked past her carrying bags and coffee, unaware that a decision made behind a restaurant had just cost her a job. Her phone buzzed once, an unknown number. She ignored it. Across town, Theo was discharged into his mother's arms, stitches tight but clean. Police cars idled down his street that night, slow and watchful. And somewhere else, a subcontractor stared at a set of manifests that no longer matched, realizing far too late that silence wouldn't save him. Time didn't heal anything right away. It just covered things up. Theo went back to school with a stitched wound under his shirt and a story he'd been coached to repeat. I fell. I didn't see anything. I don't remember faces. His teachers watched him more closely. His mother walked him to the corner every morning and waited until he disappeared through the gate before turning back. The police came twice more. Each visit was shorter than the last. They asked about the warehouse again, about the men, about whether he'd recognize anyone if he saw them. Theo answered carefully, eyes always on his hands. He learned quickly which answers made notebooks close and which ones made questions continue. Eventually, the visits stopped. Across the city, the warehouse went dark. Trucks that used to arrive after midnight stopped coming. A subcontractor's license was quietly suspended pending review. No arrests were announced. No headlines ran. Things didn't explode, they dissolved. Keshia felt the silence most sharply. Days turned into weeks. Job applications disappeared into online portals. Calls never came back. Friends told her she'd done the right thing, but their voices softened when they talked about rent and bills and how long unemployment could really last. She stopped checking the news. One afternoon, months later, an envelope appeared in her mailbox. No logo, no return address, just her name written neatly, like someone had taken their time. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a check. Keshia stared at the number, her breath catching. It wasn't charity. It was precise. And suddenly, the silence felt intentional. Keshia read the letter 3 times before the words started to settle. It wasn't long, no apology, no explanation, just a confirmation that certain outstanding matters had been resolved. Medical expenses listed by date and amount. A final line stating that the enclosed payment represented lost income during a period of unexpected separation from employment. No signature. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the paper back into the envelope. The check was real. She verified it twice, once online and once by calling the bank, her voice careful, neutral. The clerk didn't hesitate. The funds were cleared, legitimate, untouchable. That was what unsettled her most. This wasn't a favor, it was accounting. Over the next few days, other things shifted. A rejection email she'd already received disappeared from her inbox, replaced by a request for an interview she didn't remember applying for. A logistics company downtown called, saying her resume had come highly recommended. When she asked by whom, the line went quiet for half a second too long. "We don't usually disclose that," the recruiter said. Keshia accepted the interview but slept poorly that night. Every knock at the door made her heart jump. Every unfamiliar car outside her building caught her attention. She thought about tearing up the check. She didn't. Across town, Theo watched from his bedroom window as a moving truck pulled away from the house across the street. A man he'd seen once, only once, stood on the sidewalk, phone to his ear, arguing quietly before climbing into a car and driving off. Theo touched the faint scar beneath his shirt. Whatever had started in the alley hadn't ended there. It had only changed shape. And Keshia was still standing in the middle of it, whether she wanted to be or not. Keshia started the new job on a Monday. No orientation video, no paperwork lecture about liability, just a desk, a badge, and a supervisor who treated her like she'd always belonged there. The work was quiet, routes, schedules, confirmations, nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, and yet every decision felt heavier than it used to. She learned quickly that efficiency mattered more than permission. No one said it out loud, but she could feel it in the way problems were handled. Fixed early, handled quietly, never allowed to reach the point where systems had to explain themselves. It unsettled her. It also made sense. Weeks passed, life steadied. Then one evening, as she locked up her apartment, she noticed a boy across the street struggling with a bike chain, hands scraped, bleeding lightly. His mother was still inside, arguing on the phone, unaware. For a moment, Keshia just watched. Not because she didn't care. Because she was thinking. She remembered Theo's eyes in the alley. The way fear had lived there longer than pain. The way rules had slowed everything down. Keshia crossed the street and knelt beside the boy, helping him fix the chain. He smiled, relief easy and uncomplicated. No danger this time. No choice that could ruin her life. As she stood, her phone buzzed with a notification. An internal message reminding staff to escalate all incidents through proper channels. Kasia stared at the screen. She slipped the phone back into her pocket without replying. Because now she understood something the rules never taught her. When systems fail, someone still has to decide. And if it happened again, if a child was bleeding, afraid, and running out of time, who would she call first? Theo Pike still walks a different route home. Not because anyone told him to, but because some lessons stay in the body. The scar on his side fades, then hardens, a thin line he touches without thinking when sirens pass too close or when he hears glass break somewhere behind him. He never sees the men again, not clearly, not close enough to name, just shadows that stop appearing after a while. Kasia James keeps her head down and her instincts sharp. She doesn't talk about the alley. She doesn't talk about the call. And no one ever asks. Han Kwon-yi never contacts her again. He doesn't need to. The warehouse is gone. The subcontractor is gone. The paperwork closes itself. Nothing about that night becomes public. Except one thing. A child lived. So let me ask you something, and be honest. If you were Kasia James, and a child was bleeding in front of you, but the system told you to wait, who would you have called? 911, knowing help might come too late. Or someone with power, knowing it could cost you everything. And if that child survived because you broke the rules, would you still say the rules mattered more? Tell me in the comments. There's no right answer here, just the one you'd live with.